Alright everyone, welcome back to Phoenix Point for another guide video, and today we are going to be covering cybernetics. The intention was to release this after the guide to their counterparts, mutations. However, some of the patch rebalancing and changes to the game actually threw out a lot of the analysis I did in that video, so I took that down and I'll be putting that up soon. But cybernetics remain in place, so we're going to talk about them today. We're going to introduce what are cybernetics, how do you get access to them, and then we're going to do an analysis of generally when you might use them, and then we're going to look at the individual pieces and figure out what is the use case for individual cybernetic technologies. So first and foremost, what are cybernetics in Phoenix Point? They are one of the ways that you can adapt a soldier using technology to replace limbs. They replace both armor and a body part essentially, and they can be accessed through this augment menu here. And what they are body part replacements where you can replace up to 2 parts, not 3, because 3 parts causes an individual to go insane, as you discover in the story, but up to 2 parts of an individual's body can be replaced with cybernetic components. This allows you to both not use armor and get access to some unique abilities that you otherwise can't access by just equipping them with armor. It's a very similar concept to mutations, which you can access in very much the same way, where instead of replacing it with a cybernetic component, you use mutated components instead. So they really are the counterpart to mutations, but whereas the disciples of Anu respond to, I suppose, the challenges of the world that's being invaded by adopting mutagens and alien DNA, New Jericho starts out with the idea of actually making humans tougher instead by replacing parts of them with machinery. Synedrion, after originally being a little bit cautious on that idea, comes in and develops the highest tech implants, and all the level 3 cybernetics are in fact Synedrion designs. So that's what they are, that's how you access them. Let's talk a little bit about generally what are their overall strengths and weaknesses and how do you get these things on the soldiers. Well, you don't start the game with the ability to produce cybernetics, and you're only going to have access to them if you have the Blood and Titanium DLC. But I imagine most of you have that because most will have probably the Season Pass or be looking at getting the Year 1 edition to the game. Once you've done that, all you need to do is, once you get access to the cybernetics tech, which comes from the New Jericho tech tree, construct a cybernetics lab in any one of your bases. The cybernetics lab costs 300 materials and 200 tech, draws 3 power. Just having one of these anywhere on the globe will allow you to instantly cybernetically augment anyone anywhere else. You don't have to bring the soldiers back to the lab to augment them. You can instantly replace their body parts anywhere in the world as long as you've constructed at least one cybernetics lab. And as partial compensation for building it, it also produces a little bit of research. Not as efficient as building research labs, but it's a little reward for having a cybernetics lab out there. So that's the lab that you build. Once you've done that, what does it actually unlock for you, and what are these things got going for them? So let's have a look at this augmentation menu, which is unlocked once you have the technology. You get access to 3 tiers in a row. The lowest tech, which you should have relatively early, probably just by getting access to New Jericho tech tree, is your tier 1 augmentations. Then later on, more advanced ones will be developed, more advanced New Jericho augmentations, and the final level will actually be Synedrion's advanced cybernetic augmentations. Not going to go through the tech tree amounts too much. I'm going to do a tech tree video which will cover that separately. But suffice to say, you've got your bottom tier, your middle tier, your late tier. They do have a sort of escalating field of overall efficacy and coolness, but it's important to note that the later tech ones aren't straight upgrades. They are not replacements on the earlier tiers. Like everything in Phoenix Point, it's about making choices and emphasizing different aspects. Why might you want cybernetics? Let's talk big picture before we dive in. What's the general gist? Well, if the pitch for mutations, it's weird to talk about cybernetics by opening with mutations, but hear me out. If the pitch for mutations was, we're going to give you slightly different abilities and in a much discounted form, because you pay with mutagens, and mutagens are easy to get access to. They're one of the most abundant resources in the game, and you can grab them through capturing aliens. If the prop for these was, this is the budget opportunity in order to get reasonable abilities onto a soldier, and sometimes superior options to the armor, like the stealth legs, for example, are just one of the best deals anywhere in Phoenix Point. Cybernetics isn't your Ford, it's your Ferrari. It is about giving you the best option in some measures in a variety of fields. It's about giving you really cool, unique abilities and options, things that you can't do any other way. And often with stats that makes the other choices, both the mutagen and the conventional armor, that would make them jealous. The problem is they cost the earth. Cybernetic augmentation is the Ferrari option. It's what you go to when you want soldiers that are blinged out to the absolute nines. You want them to accomplish specific objectives. So, before we jump into the specific pieces, let me make this observation. I think cybernetics belong on your A team. If mutations are what you use to get your C and D and E team equipped and out there cost effectively, to save on manufacturing time, to save on cost, to save on armor, cybernetics are what you put on guys who you just need to squeeze every little bit of performance out of possible. And even then, are they always worth it? I'm not sure, but I'll make that case on an individual piece-by-piece basis. I think you'll agree that some of them are very, very cool. There are two reasons to note before I jump into them that I regard them as expensive. The first is that they're just expensive to install. The second is that if they are destroyed and damaged, you have to repair them. You don't have to do that with armor when body parts are damaged. You don't have to do that with mutated components, but you've got to pay a repair cost on disabled cybernetic components. An extra tax, I suppose, for deploying this, the highest tech armor available in the Phoenix Point universe. So they're expensive. You need your own tech tree to do them. They have a maintenance cost associated with them. You're giving up the opportunity to use armor that you might have looted or mutations that you can produce using captured Pandorans. What are these? What are these cybernetics? Why might you want to use them? Should we look at some individual components? I think we should. So let's start in tier 1, and let's start with the chest piece. I think the chest piece, the Juggernaut Torso, is a good example of the overall premise, I suppose, of cybernetics, beginning with this absolute first level, in that it is a top-tier Rolls-Royce option with a little bit of cost associated. So what does a Juggernaut Torso gives you? 45 armor, subtracts 1 speed, minus stealth, which doesn't matter on anything that's not an infiltrator, plus 2 accuracy, and then it gives you 3 additions. The extend shield option, which if you've played the game, you'll have seen the Pure do. It basically deploys an energetic riot shield which blocks all damage incoming from a certain direction. It's a very tanky ability. Usually I prefer to kill enemies, but it does have an ability to protect you from certain classes of damage coming from certain directions, if you can trust that that's where the damage is going to come from. In certain circumstances, like tunnel fighting, this can be kind of cool. The Bionic Augmentation is an interesting passive ability which comes with all of your cybernetics, which is that you're not going to get bleed if the part is disabled. You've got immunity to viral, poison damage, you have resistance to paralysis, and vulnerability to acid. Now, of those, viral, poison, paralysis, bleed are all more common in most situations than acid. Acid is basically acid worms, is the most common vector. You can be careful about that. The final advantage of the Juggernaut Torso is your demolition state. This basically lets your guy Kool-Aid Man through walls. He just man modes up, or in the case of, like, she can Kool-Aid Man too. She can go straight through walls. There's not gender discrimination here. Smack straight through into a building, saves you movement time. In things like the Queen's Lair, it allows you easier access to where all the loot is in the center after you knock out the Queen, if you don't want to jump in there. It's a mobility enhancement, really. Let's compare this piece to the items it would replace. And the two best comparisons are the best ordinary heavy armor plate, which is the Anvil, and the mutation version. So let's have a look at the mutation version first. Complete opposite end of the spectrum. The Regeneration Torso only has 34 armor, 11 less, minus 2 speed, so more speed reduction. The accuracy difference is 12. It's a minus 10 instead of a plus 2. That's a big swing. So across the board, it is worse in every conventional way. You don't have any of your resistances, but you gain a fire resist and you get regeneration. All in all, while regeneration is cool, the armor and abilities and performance, and in particular the accuracy, probably, and speed, all of those are very, very important, means that this is probably, but regarded by most people as an inferior piece to the Juggernaut Torso. with the possible exception that regeneration could be valuable. The difference is it's super bloody cheap. At 200 mutagens, this thing costs a tiny fraction. It used to be that you could say mutagens and food were interchangeable because you get the same amount. But now that the amount of food you get from melting down captured Pandorans has been reduced, but the mutagen numbers are still comparatively higher, arguably it's even cheaper. If you can run up a capture economy, you might argue that this thing only costs 150 food. The cybernetic augmentation, however, costs 44 tech and 350 odd materials, 353 I think. Even at your best trade ratio, where tech costs 5 materials or food, you're looking at a cost of around 573 stuff versus a cost of somewhere between like roughly 200 stuff or 150 to 200 stuff for the mutagen option in the middle. You can really see the discount option versus like top shelf aged single malt Scottish whiskey option at the other end. In the middle, you have the Anvil. And you'll see instantly that the Anvil is kind of a compromise. I don't want that, I want that. So the Anvil has 40 armor, more than the Bio, less than the Cybernetic. -2 speed, same as the Bio, but worse than the Cybernetic. The accuracy is the same as the Bio, much worse than the Cybernetic. It has no inbuilt resistances, and it gives you the jet jump. And it does this for costing 35 tech and 275 materials, which is 450 stuff. So for every Anvil and it takes manufacturing time. That's the other thing to note about this central option. You have to manufacture armor. You don't have to manufacture cybernetics or mutagens, or your mutated options. So about 200 cost for the Bio option, 450 for plus time for the Anvil 2, 570 odd for the cybernetic. And the stats of the cybernetic are across the board the best. The question is, do you value regen versus jet jump versus the shield, the resistances, and running through walls? I think that in this case, the cybernetic's abilities don't outshine its competitors, but the stats and the cost illustrate the general point. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, so the clarity head. That piece, which you'll see in a lot of the art for the pure. Very, very common amongst pure soldiers, this clarity head. So, 30 armor, plus 5 accuracy, immunity to mind control, and all of your usual bionic resistances. For 18 tech and 145 materials. If we compare that to the mutated version, which is this head here, 30 armor, but this has -15% accuracy, and it has minus perception, and it only gives daze immunity rather than mind control immunity. And mind control immunity is a much stronger effect, in my view, than daze immunity. Mind control can ruin your day, whereas daze you can usually see coming. The number of enemies that can cause it, like Chirons in close combat, there's a relatively few things that will cause daze, whereas mind control can really ruin your day. But you get the same amount of armor. So all in all, almost strictly inferior piece. The armor's good, but that's a big swing in negative accuracy. A 20% swing in accuracy is huge. The perception negative is a problem. The resistances are much less valuable, but this costs 80 mutagens, so 80 stuff, whereas the cybernetic, as you saw, cost 18 tech, 145 materials. In the middle, the best comparison would probably be a heavy helmet, actually, which he's wearing because that's got the relevant armor, 27 armor, minus 10% accuracy, minus 5 perception, and no benefits. So in this case, you can probably argue that, like, really, the heavy helmet hasn't really got much going for it. The new Jericho one is slightly better and more competitive, but again, costs somewhere in between, has middling stats, doesn't have inspiring special abilities in most cases, the generic piece, and takes manufacturing time. So I would say that the new Jericho helmets, which you can find, like, there's no reason not to use them on people who you want to use them on, but really I wouldn't be equipping heavy helmets often. You might want to put assault helmets on either way. And the final piece in Tier 1, the legs. The Armadillo Legs have 40 armor, which is a bloody lot for some legs. And again, comparable to the heavy plating that you see in Tier 1 across the board. 40 armor, -1 speed, +5% accuracy. So again, you're seeing there's a plus accuracy component, which you will see in the mutation version, but not in the ordinary manufactured one. So straight upgrade over the Anvil legs. Immunity to goo and landing shock absorption are an advantage here. The landing shock absorption is pretty niche, but immunity to goo can be really cool. Goo can mess you up. Like having your entire squad immobilized by goo, remembering things that like jet jump don't stop goo, can be a real problem. This is the sort of guy who can get out of there, get a beat on that Chiron, spot that Chiron, and kill it, split the party, whatever, to get everyone else out of trouble. 165 materials, 20 tech gets you that 40 armor plus 5% accuracy. The mutated option gets you more accuracy, less armor, and gives you -2 speed and stomp. So, the extra accuracy is cool. I think the speed hurts it, and I think immunity to goo is probably better than the stomp in most cases. The problem with these legs is that you don't have the speed to get up close and use the stomp, and you're up that close, you want to be using other things instead of the stomp instead. So, there's a case, but all else being equal, the cybernetic legs would probably be better. Difference is 100 mutagens versus all the costs associated with the cybernetics, plus the maintenance and upkeep costs. Still, serviceable item. 30 armor plus 20% accuracy is nothing to be sneezed at, even for -2 speed. If you look at the armor option of the Anvil 2 legs, to get 35 armor, you'd lose 1 speed. So you're not losing the speed, you're losing a little bit of speed. So you're not competitive with the cybernetics, but you're faster than the mutation. But you lose 10% accuracy instead of gaining either 5 or 20%. In this case, the gap is quite huge. The leg armor costs more than the mutation. It doesn't cost that much less than the cybernetic version, and it doesn't have the advantages of either. So the Anvil 2 legs are hard to defend, and it's another reason why you don't see many people using heavy legs on any of their builds, including their heavies. They'd rather get some accuracy on their heavies so their heavies can hell 2 people, or they want a little bit of mobility, they want to be jump-based, and they want to be using grenade launchers. Either way, the heavy legs are not always the first priority because those grenade lobbers don't tend to be the first into the field of fire. So how do we summarize Tier 1? How do we summarize Tier 1? Well, at Tier 1, I think the most competitive, what my personal preferences is the head is extremely competitive. It gives you a heavily armored resistance plus mind control immunity and a little bit of accuracy in a helmet. Like, it's a competitive option. The mutated head's not particularly good by comparison. The only reason you might want to wear, if you were only concerned about maximizing your head slot and you're at this tech level, you might want a sniper helmet instead for even more accuracy. But immunity to mind control and a little bit of armor protection, if you want something with tankiness, here's an option. I prefer not getting shot, but if you want tankiness, the clarity head is here. The legs and torso are also interesting. The reason for me the torso loses out is because often I want to actually keep the non-augmented torso because I like jet jumps. If I want something with a lot of armor, I want jet jumps on it, so I'll usually stick with like an Anvil 2 or the starting armor. That said, there is a place for this, and I've used this on one build, and it performs well. It has consistently performed well. You don't have the accuracy malice usually associated with really heavy protection. You get a lot of armor. 45 is a lot of armor, especially early in the game. Later on, you won't feel it as much, but early, if you're decked out in cybernetics and heavy protection, people are going to struggle to hurt. Like, a lot of weapons are going to struggle to hurt you early on. And later on, when you fight like shotgun wielding Tritons, like shotguns will struggle. Shotguns will glance and bounce off you. This is not a game where you tank often, but if you want to, the Juggernaut Torso gives you an option. And finally, the Armadillo Legs, super heavily protected. They're faster than the mutated option. They give you immunity to goo, which is kind of cool, and some resistances. The accuracy bonus is not amazing. It's much better than heavy leg armor conventionally. The only difference is, in this case, you might want to instead consider the mutated option for the extra accuracy if you're going to be shooting a bunch of people. If you just want the tankiness, the immunity to goo, a couple of resistances, and you really care about that damage resistance, there's a case to be made for the Armadillo. So, Tier 1, all about tankiness, resistances, immunities. Mind control immunity is notable. That extend shield is notable, as is the accuracy bonus on what is ultimately a super heavy piece of armor. In fact, I think the heaviest piece of armor in the game that you can get access to normally. At all, I think. So, yeah, notable. And these are the cybernetics you get early on and are thus most likely to use. Expensive, valuable, but consider, is it worth making this big an investment in an individual soldier? Because often the answer will be, I should get another facility, or I should get several other soldiers, or something else going instead. Let's talk Tier 2. Okay, Tier 2. Let's look at what I regard as one of the pieces of trash in this lineup first. I said generally nice things about cybernetics, they're usually top tier. But for me, the propeller legs, these rocket-powered jump legs from New Jericho, are just a bit shit considering their cost. It's also notable that at Tier 2, the quite close relationship between the cybernetics and the mutations breaks down. They become less directly comparable because they do fundamentally different things. So, the propeller legs, 20 armor, 3 speed, no accuracy difference. You get some bionic resistances and the rocket leap. The rocket leap is disappointing. It doesn't really do that much. It won't let you get up to high spaces. It won't let you cover large distances. It doesn't let you skip goo. Like, it's used to skip squares that might have hazards on it. And it's like a very mini, jet jump. Like, cool, but do I really want to invest in a piece just to get access to this quite limited, short-range jetpack jump that doesn't give me elevation? And you'll struggle to get real use out of it. It costs 49 tech and 145 materials. So at our 5-to-1 cost, we're looking at about 250 plus 145. Call it 400. Call it 400 stuff to manufacture this, which is real harsh. That 49 tech there is quite expensive. Quite humbling when you compare it to, say, the Juggernaut Torso, which is a much more impressive piece, I think, anyway. It's just very expensive. Now, by comparison, if you look at just the ordinary Disciple of Anu Assault Leg Armor, in fact, let's just look at all the ordinary Assault Leg Armors. You can get more armor and lose a little bit of speed for using the New Jericho ones. A lot of people will use Phlegotons. You get more accuracy bonus and only slightly less armor, and you lose 1 speed, but you pay 15 tech and 125 instead of 49, which is kind of ridiculous. But the real winner in terms of direct comparisons is this right here. This is the Disciples of Anu Leg Armor, the Acolyte Leg Armor, which comes at Tier 1 as soon as you meet them and get to level 50 relations with them. You lose 2 armor. That's the entire comparison. You lose 2 armor, and you lose the jet jump. But it costs 11 tech and 90 mats instead of 49 tech and 145 materials. So if I do that quickly, that's what, 55 plus 90, it's 150 instead of 400. And there's no repair costs associated, and you get it earlier. I'm sorry, but it's hard to make the rocket leg case when so many of the other cybernetics and mutations offer real, genuine advantages over their comparison pieces. Personally, I think the rocket legs are a bit, they are underwhelming. I'm tempted to call them a bit shit. Feel free to correct me if you found a use for these guys, but really, they're the disappointing part of the lineup as far as I'm concerned. I tried them out, I didn't like them. If we look at the Neural Torso instead, the Neural Torso, I'm, again, a little bit underwhelmed. In fact, I'm very underwhelmed. Let's be clear, I'm very underwhelmed. You get plus 10% accuracy and 30 armor. You get Bionic Augmentation, so your usual Bionic resistances, and you get double weight that can be carried without causing movement penalty. Weight is not normally a problem unless you want really, really huge loadouts or you're doing scavenging with low-level troops. High-level troops on scavenging will have strength points and be able to carry things or will travel light. So heavy lifter is a niche benefit, So remember that, 30 armor, 10 accuracy. Ignore the stealth, there's no other negatives. Let's go find something which has equivalent protections. And again, assault armor is going to be similar. So you can get 24 armor and no accuracy on the Wardog Assault. You can get 2 accuracy and 20 armor on the Synedrion. And you're like, wow, Perun, these numbers are actually adding up pretty well. And if I go for like protection in the torso, then I'm actually going to really struggle. Well, here's my problem with that. If you're saying just as a balanced piece, 30-10 is good, then why not 45-2? And get that extra armor and protection. I get maybe that 8% accuracy is really important to you. But here's the real kick in the nads. 118 tech. 118 tech. So that's what? 600 materials worth of tech. 200 materials worth of materials. So what? 835 stuff. 835. If you make the case that this is like a good general use piece, better than other ones, justifying the cost is going to be really difficult compared to what else you might put there. Compared to other options, it's difficult to make that case. I won't say that it's complete trash. I will say that saying it's worth its cost is very, very difficult. Because all I see is a general purpose assault torso with some heavy lifting capacity. Good, but 118 tech. That's a training lab, training facility. That's an entire facility. That's equipment, weapons and equipment for a soldier. And you're talking about using one cybernetic piece. I'm not buying the neural torso at that level. The helmet, however, is a winner. Of all these things in Tier 2, which generally let me down, the neural helmet does not let you down. The neural helmet is, in my view, a winner. It is a winner because it is that most useful of things. It is, for one, it is a sniper helmet. So it's a plus 20% accuracy, plus 5 perception head. Compare that to the mutate option, which is plus 20% and more perception and a little less armor, and much, much cheaper, which is one of the challenges for the Will head is the existence of this thing, the Perceptor head, which gives that 20% accuracy at 80 mutagens rather than the cost we're going to talk about, and gives the extra perception and a little bit of stealth. And you might want to rule the Will helmet out. Don't. No, I don't want mutate, I want augment. Don't. Because neural disruption is very, very cool. Neural disruption means that the target that you hit for one turn becomes disoriented, and disoriented disables will point abilities. You know what uses will points? Just about everything that ruins a run. Just about everything that ruins a mission from the Pandorans is a will point ability. Queens with the leap ability, who are going to use it to close on your team and instantly murder someone. Will ability. Shut it down. They can't jump. Mind control. It's a will ability. Shut it down. They can't mind control. Psychic scream. Well, that's also a will ability. There's not much the Pandorans uniformly do. Maybe Chiron, like plasma Chirons. There's not much the Pandorans do that really messes with you, that doesn't draw on will points. And as a result, the ability of a disruptor head unit to disrupt someone, ping, and then still have enough action points left to go on with their turn, shoot someone, kill someone, whatever, means that this is a valuable addition to the team. And if I have time, I'll load in and show this ability off before the end of the video. Otherwise, I'll feature it in another one. But I would seriously consider the Disruptor head. It and the Clarity head salvage the Cybernetics honor a little bit in the helmet category, and the cost is not mega prohibitive. It's not particularly protective, but 34 tech, 160 materials is entirely doable. It's not cost competitive with just using the Perceptor mutated head, but if you want to compare it with an actual sniper helmet, specifically the best sniper helmet in the game, the Acheron, it's got a little more protection on it. It's got the same accuracy, and it has extra abilities. It has extra resistances, and it has that ability to will disrupt. It is better than the Acheron, and the Acheron costs 24 tech, 110 mats. 24 tech, 110. Like, the cost difference is less evil here, and you're saving manufacturing time. So I have a couple of Disruptor heads in service. Consider it. It's worthwhile. That closes out the new Jericho line. The third level of tech actually switches tech trees, whereas all mutation is Anu, New Jericho, Synedrion. Let's talk about Synedrion and their level 3 cybernetic implants. Okay, and we'll start with the most, in my view, the most disappointing. What do I regard as more disappointed? Two of these are good, and one of these is disappointing. Let's talk about the disappointing one first. The Mirage Legs. The Mirage Legs are disappointing. Why are the Mirage Legs disappointing, you say? Well, let's look at what this thing is trying to do first. It does two things. It gives you stealth, and it gives you does not activate enemy overwatch. Cool. Those two things don't normally go together. Your stealth troops spend the game trying to go undetected, trying not to be seen, and if they can't be seen, they can't trigger overwatch. So Shadow Step, instantly, stealth and Shadow Step to me don't match. Shadow Step to me would be much more viable on an assault that wants to dash through a bunch of overwatch, go rapid clearance, clear all the overwatch people. And even then, I don't regard overwatch as, it's not really a problem. It's not the thing that gets you killed in Phoenix Point. Because with snipers and with grenade launchers and all the other tools you have available to you, overwatch is not normally your problem. Or at least not normally a problem you can't deal with. It's things like will using abilities, it's the Queen, it's Chirons, it's Guardians, who admittedly are more likely to deploy shields than to use Overwatch. So the use case here is a little bit weak. The other problem here is that it just gets a little bit confused relative to the real competitor in the stealth space for infiltrators, which is if you go to mutations and you go to level 2, there's a 30% stealth that also gives you a kick ability, but really you're here for the 30% stealth for only 100 mutagens. So those extra stealth points matter. It's much, much cheaper. You do gain a few things by going to the cybernetic version and sacrificing some stealth. You get more protection, you get one extra speed point, but for a end level technology, for a level 3, and for something that's still quite expensive compared to its competitor, and one that also looks pretty bloody weird and uses up a slot, I'm not sure it can justify its existence. It's probably going to, on your infiltrators, yield to the 30% stealth legs, and that's okay. Because you can go with the Echo Head if you're going to be using infiltrators. So, what is the Echo Head? The Echo Head, 1, makes you look like a bug. 2, is relatively affordable. Gives you a minor stealth addition, so 10% stealth, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure that the actual infiltrator armor only has 10% stealth on the headpiece anyway, so you're not losing any stealth. And the mutation is only 5% stealth, so it's competitive instantly as part of a stealth kit. Now, no penalty for dark environments. I honestly don't even know what that really means, and that sounds terrible, but I've never noticed particularly bad accuracy in dark spaces because all the dark spaces tend to be pretty close range anyway. So I'm not sure really what that translates to. I haven't tried it enough to know. What I do know is that silencing all weapons means that you're much less likely to be detected when you're using loud, boomy weapons in an infiltrator. So don't feel any obligation to use the crystal crossbow. Break out the shard guns, break out the shotguns, break out the cannons, whatever you want to do. Echo head plus mutated legs equals super high stealth values. Throw it on a thief so you've got like 130% stealth or something. Give it a weapon and just blast away, and you just won't be seen. There are things like Tritons with really high perception that can give you a run for your money, but for the most part, you will be a stealthy mofo gunning people down with your like heavy cannon or Gatling machine gun, and people will be like, "Wow, I can't hear a thing." It's a bit bizarre. I need to experiment more with this. Tier 3s, full disclosure, I have not played around as much with these because they're unlocked for less of the game, and deciding to spend on them is usually a big call. But here it is. It's a useful piece, it's competitive, it's better than its armor equivalent, it's better than its biological equivalent, it's just a good pickup. So consider the Echo Head augmentation, although the Perceptor Head has a lot more accuracy going for it, if that's important to you, rather than the silencing effect. And then finally, the Vengeance Torso. So let's get the key out of the way first. The elephant in the room. This piece of tech kind of looks like crap. Like, they carved out the central torso. I don't know where this person's lung and things equivalent are. This is some really efficient life support, and if it is, why not just enclose this cavity, guys? Like, enclose this cavity, this internal volume you're not using. This is a shot trap. Like, I don't know why Synedrion designed it this way. I also don't know why the best close combat augmentation in the game, or at least arguably so, was designed by Synedrion, who were famous for avoiding conflict, being stealthy, and shooting people with either non-lethal or lethal, long-distance, super accurate paralysis or laser weapons. And they turn around and make this super effective close combat augmentation system. But there it is, and here we are. 22 armor, 20% stealth. Okay, so this is designed, you're instantly seeing this is designed for a particular sort of infiltrator. This is designed for infiltrators that use melee weapons. Not shotguns, which is what the Echo Head is there for, melee weapons. Why? Because the Vengeance Torso reduces the cost of melee attacks by 1. It's like you have permanent adrenaline rush, but for melee attacks. So what this means is that an infiltrator assault cross-class with rapid clearance can stealth up to targets, almost certainly kill them with its 1 AP melee attacks, and proceed to rapid clear bounce its way through a considerable group. With the really powerful ancient melee weapons, particularly I'm thinking of the Scyther, which has that AoE and is really brutal, this can be, you can get some ninja shit going on. It has a sort of multi-kill vibe to it because you'll bounce from target to target, stabbing a fool, you'll break contact, and try and get back into stealth. Now, is this the best option available? Like, there's probably a case to be made instead for like other rapid clearance builds, but I've tried it and it is really cool. Under certain circumstances, it is really cool, and they can put down a lot of pain. And if you can have synergy where you feed them a few extra action points, there are a few classes that can convert AP to damage more effectively than a Vengeance Torsoed guy with a Scyther in close combat with an opponent. It's brutal. And because it gives you melee weapon proficiency right off the bat, you don't have to cross-class into something that has melee proficiency. That sounds like a big deal because it would allow your infiltrator assaults, for example, to turn into brutal clearing types. The difference is normally the people I would use for that role are the ones that come with the unique soldier ability, which is gain melee weapon proficiency and bonus damage. So if Lady Luck is with you, you probably won't notice the melee weapon proficiency that much. you'll only notice the combat matrix. But if it's not agreeing with you, then sure, you can make a squad of infiltration ninjas. You can take, and you don't need to silence your weapon, so you don't need the echo head. So you can take the Vengeance Torso, you can take the mutated legs for 30% stealth right there, and then just slap an ordinary infiltrator helmet on it, and you're good to go. You're good to go with a brutal close combat mount that could go around absolutely brutalizing things. Now, doesn't come cheap. You're paying 86 tech and 260 materials. That is, I believe, the second most expensive piece out there. But it's much better than this neural torso, which costs more. Go figure. Costing in this game can be a little bit weird. Anyway, so this is an example of a unique piece. One that does something that is different, that gives you an ability that goes beyond what you could normally do. It's not really just about the stats being different, although it does offer a little more armor than the Infiltrator chest piece. It's more about that combat matrix resistances combination and the ability to use those melee weapons. If you look at the ordinary Styx armor by comparison, you can see you just miss out on the protection and all the abilities. So honestly, that torso is probably just the better version. It's the stealth rogue backstabbing option for those of you who are into that sort of play. So, summary. How would we use this? Well, there are winners and losers, and I would endorse considering these or some of these pieces for your A team, the team that's going to go into the most dangerous of places, that's going to bust down the door on major bases or whatnot, and really cause some heavy damage. It's going to be your it's going to be your first of level 7s that go in and cause some serious pain. Various builds and options are available to you, but really, I would look significantly at in tier 1. Consider whether you want to build tanks. If you do, going all out on a Juggernaut to breach and clear and lead the way is an option, but really, I would normally prefer to maintain the jet jump, but there are environments where the Juggernaut can be useful instead. That accuracy swing is huge. The demolition state is useful. In caves where jumping isn't allowed, so you can't use jet jump, heavies with Juggernaut torsos are actually really useful. This is a cave fighting piece par excellence. There's a case for the clarity head if mind control is getting you down a lot, so you have classes where you want to run your willpower down and thus you're vulnerable. It's heavily armored and still has accuracy, which is a combination you don't find elsewhere normally. The legs are super tough, like super tough. Hard to compete with the biological alternative, but definitely better than conventional armoring. At tier 1, there's a solid case, but if you're cheaping out, you're probably going to mutate instead. And for the chest piece, you've got to consider the jet jump. At tier 2, I love the Disruptor head for just shutting down super dangerous important enemies because you point, click, and tell it can't do anything bad this turn. Simple as that. Maybe there are moves it has that don't use willpower, but if you're using this in the right circumstances, those foes won't be in the position to use their non-willpower threats on you in the same way. I think the Neural Torso is horrifically overpriced for what it is. I do not know why this is the most expensive augmentation out there. Carry weight to me is just not that important, and there's a lot of cool things that can go in your torso, like the Vengeance. The propeller legs are just a bit meh. They're just a bit meh. I think they're pretty trashy, to be honest. I don't like them. They're not worth it compared to much cheaper assault armor that does more or less the same thing without the leap that you'll barely use. At the top tier, you get a recipe for a couple of really brutal stealth builds. The Echo Head unlocks the let's blast people away with ballistic weapons while being an infiltrator build. The Vengeance allows you to do the rapid clearance, like one AP melee weapon infiltrator cheese build, which can be lots of fun. And the Mirage Legs are a bit of a confused attempt to give you an opportunity to do like this Overwatch bypassing infiltrator, except you probably don't actually need that because more stealth would just be useful instead, and much cheaper. Overall, I like augments. I don't think it's worth chasing the research aggressively, so funding Synedrion to do it, but getting access to a cybernetic lab early, unlocking some of these abilities is good because it'll give you an opportunity to lift your A team a little bit further. I wouldn't roll them out across your squads. I'd usually just want more squads or more facilities, but if you hit the late game and you're drowning in resources and you want a B or a C team that are almost as capable and they're all hitting level 7, yeah, maybe splash out on a few as well. There's a couple of build options available here. All in all, Blood and Titanium, useful addition to the game. It gives you a sort of an actual tier 2 on armor, an actual level of research above, because these pieces tend to be superior to conventional armor. And while you might pay the earth, the abilities that they bring are often, although not always, worth it in my view. Anyway, that's my summary, that's my guide for cybernetics. I'll be back with another topic relatively soon. If you think I've erred on any of these judgments, please put that down in the comments. I'm happy to hear from people who have had play and used some of these cybernetics a little bit more. This is just my view of the meta and analysis of the statistics versus the relative costs. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves and staying safe, and I'll see you all soon.